Let's talk about something that most men over 60 won't bring up with their doctor, their wife, or even their best buddy over a beer. And I get it. You grew up in a generation where you just didn't talk about this stuff. You handled your business, you kept it to yourself, and that was that. But here's the thing. What I'm about to share with you today could genuinely change the way you age. And I'm not exaggerating. A study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine followed men over the age of 60 and found that those who maintained regular sexual activity, including self-stimulation, had better cardiovascular markers, lower rates of prostate issues, improved sleep quality, and reported significantly less anxiety and depression. This isn't about chasing some fleeting thrill. This is about your health, plain and simple. I'm Dr. Grace Holloway. I've spent over 20 years specializing in men's health, urology, and healthy aging. I've sat across from thousands of men in my office, veterans, retired firefighters, grandfathers, widowers, guys who built businesses with their bare hands. And I can tell you that the number one thing holding most of them back from living fully in their later years isn't their knees or their back. It's the fact that they've completely shut down their sexual selves. And nobody told them what that costs. What I'm going to walk you through today has nothing to do with locker room talk or some late-night infomercial nonsense. We're talking about preserving critical functions in your body, protecting your prostate, keeping your mind sharp, balancing your hormones, and slowing down the aging process that, in most cases, starts quietly in your nervous system and your cardiovascular system long before you notice it on the outside. Today, you're going to hear the truth that nobody ever explained to you. The truth they could have laid out decades ago, but didn't because of stigma, ignorance, and old-fashioned embarrassment. And I promise you, once you understand the power of this kind of self-care, you'll realize there's still a whole lot of life, energy, and good years left in the tank. Before we dive in, do me a favor. Drop your age and where you're watching from in the comments. I want to know who's out there, and it helps me create content that's actually useful for you guys specifically. All right, let's get into it. Number 1. Sexual self-care keeps your prostate healthy and your plumbing working. A lot of men figure that once they hit 60 or 70, things just naturally slow down below the belt, and that's the end of the story. Some guys even think it's normal, maybe even dignified, to just let that whole part of life go quiet. But that belief is one of the biggest reasons men lose comfort, function, and health in their pelvic region as they get older. Here's what actually happens when you stop. When a man goes a long time without any kind of sexual stimulation or release, blood flow to the pelvic area decreases significantly. Without that circulation, the tissues in and around the prostate don't get the oxygen and nutrients they need. The prostate can become congested, which increases the risk of inflammation, benign prostatic hyperplasia. That's the fancy term for an enlarged prostate, and even contributes to urinary problems like getting up 4 times a night to use the bathroom. Think of it like a car engine that's been sitting in the garage for 2 years. You don't just turn the key and expect everything to run smooth. Things seize up, fluids stagnate, parts corrode. Your body works the same way. On the flip side, when you maintain regular sexual activity, even on your own, your body sends fresh, oxygen-rich blood into the pelvic region. That blood nourishes the tissues, helps keep the prostate at a healthy size, maintains erectile function, and supports the muscles that control urination. Harvard Medical School actually published data showing that men who ejaculated more frequently had a lower risk of prostate cancer. We're not talking about some fringe theory here. This is mainstream medicine. I've seen this play out hundreds of times in my practice. Men who come in complaining about weak stream, constant urgency, or erectile difficulties, and when we dig into their history, they've essentially shut down all sexual activity years ago. When they reintroduce it gradually, with intention and without shame, many of them start seeing improvements they didn't think were possible at their age. For that, no prescription was needed, no procedure, just reconnecting with a natural function their body was designed to maintain. So, even if you don't have a partner right now or things aren't active in the bedroom, taking care of your sexual health is an act of self-maintenance, and conscious, intentional self-stimulation is one of the simplest, most natural, and most effective ways to do that. Number 2, doing it the wrong way can actually numb you out. For a lot of guys, the way they handle things hasn't changed since they were teenagers. Same grip, same speed, same routine. Get in, get done, move on. And look, not here to judge anyone's habits, but I need you to understand what happens to your body and your brain when you repeat that same mechanical pattern for decades. Your brain is incredibly adaptive. If it keeps receiving the same intense, rushed stimulus over and over, it starts to wire itself to respond only to that specific pattern. Neuroscientists call this neurological conditioning. The result is that your natural sensitivity drops. You need more pressure, more speed, or more intensity to feel what used to come easily. I hear it in my office all the time. Guys telling me things like, "Doc, I can only finish with a death grip," or "My wife's touch doesn't do anything for me anymore." In some cases, a man avoids intimacy with his partner altogether because human touch feels too slow, too gentle compared to what he's trained himself to respond to. This loss of sensitivity can also lead to delayed ejaculation or the inability to climax at all, which is more common than you'd think in men over 60 and often has nothing to do with testosterone levels. And here's the kicker. When your body doesn't reach sufficient arousal, natural responses like erection quality and blood flow to the area suffer too, which creates a feedback loop that makes everything harder over time. The good news is you can retrain your body. Instead of rushing to the finish line every time, start paying attention to slower, more varied touch. Focus on the sensations instead of the destination. It's like retraining your taste buds after years of drowning everything in hot sauce. You learn to appreciate the subtleties again. When you turn this into a moment of presence rather than just a physical release, you give your body the chance to respond more fully, more deeply, and more pleasurably, both alone and with a partner. Number 3, your hormones don't just die after 60. You can actually wake them up. Most guys assume that after a certain age, the hormonal decline is permanent, inevitable, and completely out of their hands. And yeah, your body does go through real changes. Testosterone does drop. That's a fact. But what most men don't know is that certain daily habits can directly influence that balance. And one of the most powerful ones is sexual activity, including solo practice. When you stimulate yourself and reach higher levels of arousal, your body releases a cocktail of chemicals that affect way more than just desire. You get a boost in oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, which promotes feelings of well-being and connection. Dopamine spikes, which is tied to motivation, focus, and pleasure. And endorphins flood your system, your body's natural painkillers, which help reduce chronic aches and improve your overall mood. This chemical cascade isn't just about feeling relaxed after the fact. It actively helps regulate cortisol, the stress hormone. When cortisol stays elevated for too long, it contributes to weight gain, especially around the midsection, disrupts sleep, weakens your immune system, and accelerates aging. I've had patients walk into my office complaining about constant fatigue, brain fog, and mood swings. When we looked at their lifestyle, they completely disconnected from their sexuality. They figured that chapter was closed, but when they brought it back slowly and mindfully, many of them reported sleeping better, having more energy during the day, and even thinking more clearly. Your body responds to what you give it. If your sexual life disappears, your brain decides there's no reason to keep producing certain chemicals at optimal levels. But when you re-engage, even on your own, you're sending a clear signal. I still need this. And your body answers. It starts producing the hormones that are good, not just for your sex life, but for your overall health. That's why I tell my patients to think of mindful sexual activity the same way they think about going to the gym or eating right. It's not a luxury, it's maintenance. Number 4, the shame you carry is making you sick. Of all the barriers that keep men from living fully in their later years, shame might be the quietest and the most destructive. It starts early. Maybe your dad never talked about it. Maybe you picked up the message in church or from the culture around you that self-pleasure was dirty, sinful, or something only weak men needed. That message got reinforced over and over until it became part of how you see yourself. Now, here's what I want you to hear, and I mean really hear. I know some of you have strong faith, and I respect that deeply. This isn't about challenging your beliefs or telling you to abandon your values, but I've sat with too many men who were suffering physically and emotionally because they believed their body's natural needs were something to be ashamed of. And that shame wasn't protecting them. It was destroying them. When you feel guilt about your own sexuality, your body responds with muscle tension, elevated cortisol, and in many cases, difficulty relaxing or experiencing pleasure at all. That chronic state of stress disrupts your sleep, raises your blood pressure, increases anxiety, contributes to depression, and even weakens your immune system. I've watched men carry this weight for decades, never saying a word about it to anyone. The good news is this cycle can be broken. I've seen men who, after years of zero intimate connection with themselves, started simply placing a hand on their chest, their abdomen, breathing, and reconnecting with the physical experience of being in their body. No agenda, no rush, just presence. Over time, they noticed changes not only in how they felt physically, but in their confidence, their mood, and even in how they carried themselves. Letting go of shame doesn't mean abandoning your values or losing your moral compass. It means acknowledging that your body still belongs to you, and caring for it, including the sexual dimension, is an act of health, not guilt. One of my patients, a 72-year-old retired Marine, put it better than I ever could. He said, "Doc, I spent my whole life taking care of everybody else. It took me this long to figure out I was allowed to take care of myself too." That's what we're talking about here. Number 5, the internet can rewire your brain, but you can take it back. A lot of men think that watching explicit content online is harmless, just something to pass the time, especially if they're living alone. And I'm not here to lecture you about morality, but I do need to tell you what the science says about what happens to your brain. Modern online content, especially the high-intensity, rapid-fire kind, triggers a massive dopamine spike. Your brain's reward system lights up like a Christmas tree. The problem is, over time, your brain adapts. It needs more and more stimulation to get the same response. This is called desensitization, and it's the exact same mechanism involved in any kind of dependency. What does that mean practically? It means that subtler forms of pleasure, like the touch of a partner, your own imagination, or gentle self-stimulation, stop being enough. Some men find they can only respond to a screen, and real physical intimacy feels flat by comparison. That's not a normal part of aging. That's a trained response. The encouraging part is that neuroscience has shown this adaptation is reversible. The first step is giving yourself a reset period, time away from that content so your neural pathways can recalibrate. During that time, invest in more natural stimulation, explore your own body, use your imagination, pay attention to real sensations. Focus on what you actually feel, not what you see on a screen. By reconnecting with real, mindful stimulation, you don't just restore physical sensitivity. You rebuild the emotional connection to pleasure that makes intimacy satisfying, whether you're with someone or on your own. It's a gradual process, but it gives you back something incredibly valuable: the freedom to feel fully without needing artificial input to get there. Number 6, your pelvic floor is a use it or lose it system. Most men have heard women talk about Kegel exercises, but here's what almost nobody tells guys. You have a pelvic floor too, and it matters just as much. Your pelvic floor is a network of muscles, nerves, and blood vessels that supports your bladder, your bowel, and plays a critical role in erectile function. When those muscles weaken, and they will if you don't use them, you're looking at increased risk of urinary incontinence, bowel control issues, weaker erections, and reduced sexual sensation. In practice, what I've seen is that men who go years without any sexual activity, solo or partnered, experience real physical changes. The tissues lose elasticity, circulation decreases, nerve response slows down, and the pelvic floor muscles get weak, just like any muscle you stop exercising. When these men want to resume intimacy, their bodies don't cooperate the way they expected. It's not just a lack of desire, it's actual structural and neurological change from disuse. The positive news is this can be reversed. Regular sexual arousal, even through conscious self-stimulation, promotes the kind of muscle contractions that keep the pelvic floor strong. It improves blood flow, maintains nerve sensitivity, and helps everything down there stay functional. Add in some targeted pelvic floor exercises, the male version of Kegels, and you've got a powerful combination for preventing incontinence, maintaining erection quality, and preserving sensation well into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. Keeping this area active isn't just about sex. It affects your posture, your bladder control, your confidence when you walk out the door in the morning. Your body responds to signals. If you show it that this function still matters, it works to preserve it. Number 7. The most dangerous mistake is isolation. Out of everything we've covered today, this one might be the most important. And I'm not just talking about living alone or not having many friends, though those things matter too. I'm talking about something deeper, the loss of physical touch and physical connection, both with other people and with yourself. The human body is wired to respond to touch. Even after 60, 70, or 80, your skin is still packed with sensory receptors that send signals to your brain, triggering the release of hormones like oxytocin that create feelings of well-being and connection. When that stimulus disappears, your body goes into a kind of conservation mode. It dials down the production of feel-good chemicals, ramps up cortisol, and you start seeing changes in mood, sleep, immune function, and even cognitive sharpness. In my practice, I've heard stories from men who went months, sometimes years, without a hug, a handshake that lingered, or any kind of intimate contact. Over time, they didn't just report loneliness, they reported losing interest in things they used to enjoy, trouble concentrating, and physical symptoms like chronic pain and exhaustion that had no clear medical explanation. The absence of touch also creates an emotional disconnect from your own body. When a man stops engaging with himself physically, not just for pleasure but for awareness and presence, the brain interprets it as a signal to shut that system down. Gradually, sensitivity fades, desire disappears, and then one day you look in the mirror and feel like a stranger in your own skin. But here's what I need you to know. Breaking this cycle is absolutely possible, and it starts with small steps. It might mean scheduling time for self-care. It might mean getting a massage. It might mean simply placing your hands on your own body and breathing, reminding yourself that you're still here. You still have a body that can feel, and it still deserves attention. I had a patient a few years back, 78 years old, widower, hadn't been touched in any meaningful way for over 5 years. He told me he'd started to feel like he was disappearing. When he began reintroducing simple, intentional physical contact, even just with himself, he said it was like turning the lights back on in a house he thought had been permanently shut down. That's what we're working toward here. Isolation isn't just an emotional problem. It affects your physical health, your brain, and yes, even your lifespan. Research consistently shows that social and physical disconnection is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Breaking through that isolation is an act of self-respect, and it's one of the most important steps you can take to live longer and live better. If you've made it this far, then you already understand that this conversation was never about some quick thrill. We're talking about physical, mental, and emotional health. Over the course of this video, we've covered how maintaining sexual activity, including on your own, can protect your prostate and keep your plumbing working, preserve sensitivity by avoiding mechanical habits, stimulate hormones that improve your mood and energy, release the shame that's been quietly wrecking your health, take back control from the screen, keep your pelvic floor strong and functional, and maybe most importantly, break the silent cycle of isolation that too many men suffer through alone. Every single one of these points is part of the same puzzle, your vitality. Ignoring any of them opens the door to physical discomfort, emotional exhaustion, and a disconnection from who you really are. Despite what a lot of people think, there's no expiration date on pleasure, on taking care of your intimate health, or on living an active, connected life. Science has already proven that your body responds to positive stimulation at any age. When you take time for yourself, you're sending a clear message to your brain and your body. I'm still here, I still matter, and I'm not done yet. That simple act, repeated regularly, can change the way you age. And now I want to ask you one thing. Share this video with at least one man you care about who needs to hear this. It could be a brother, a friend from the service, a neighbor, a guy at church, or someone in your family who you know is struggling in silence. When you do that, you're not just passing along information. You might be helping that man reclaim his health, his confidence, and a part of his life he thought was over. One simple action that could change everything. I'll see you in the next one.